Hello everyone and welcome back to Double Play Baseball. In this video, Ryan and I are going to be recapping the Braves 2022 offseason as well as previewing their 2023 campaign. This is a series in which we are recapping each team's offseason and looking ahead to their 2023 campaign. You can find all of them that we've done so far down in the description below. This is the NL East all week. We've done the NL West and the AL West. Make sure you're staying tuned because we're going to do every division in Major League Baseball, as well as bringing on some marquee guests, which you'll see a big one at the end of this week for the NL East. But Ryan, without further ado, why don't you break down who the Braves added and lost this offseason?
Yeah, so they were kind of busy in terms of the names that were associated with them. Obviously, starting off, the big one was the Sean Murphy trade that they added. They also add guys like Sam Hilliard, Jordan Luplow, Joe Jimenez, Lucas Luque, Dennis Santana, and then Jesse Chavez and Ariel Adrianza to a minor league deal. And then they lost Dansby Swanson and then William Contreras also in that Sean Murphy trade. They lost Kenley Jansen, their closer, Adam Duvall, Robbie Grossman, and then also Luke Jackson. And they were also kind of tied to DeGrom a little bit. People thought that DeGrom would be a Brave. He wasn't, so they were tied to a lot of big names, and they added a lot, lost a lot, and kind of missed out on some as well. Which one do you think of those are the biggest add or subtraction?
Yeah, I feel like the biggest add definitely is Sean Murphy. A lot of people would say that maybe the biggest loss is Dansby Swanson, but I think when we were looking at his year-end numbers, they didn't jump off the page quite as much as you would have expected considering the buzz around Dansby for the full year. I mean, it is a loss, but they do have Vaughn Grissom to fill his place, which we can talk about as this episode goes on. So I think Sean Murphy's the biggest add. I'll also go with rest for Ronald Acuna Jr., which he was struggling with injury all of last year, and I think this offseason getting rest for him is going to be a big deal as we move forward, at least for the Braves. But Sean Murphy feels like the biggest add, but the whole offseason for the Braves kind of feels like it evened out both ways.
Yeah, I ended up going with Dansby Swanson because Sean Murphy, obviously probably the maybe the biggest player when looking at it that way of who they added or lost. But for the Braves, I mean, you had two all-star caliber catchers already. William Contreras was an all-star last year. Travis d'Arnaud has been great, probably a top 10 catcher in baseball. You added with Sean Murphy, who's probably a top 5 catcher in baseball, but it wasn't like a necessary move for me. It was definitely helpful, and it'll help their team, but it wasn't necessary. And Dansby Swanson, while you do get and you trust it in Vaughn Grissom at short, you do lose that caliber of a Dansby Swanson player who's probably a top 10 shortstop, has experience winning with you guys, kind of a fan favorite, team leader. So, and while it wasn't maybe the biggest player that they added or lost, I think it might have the most impact considering, Vaughn Grissom might be good, but you're filling it with a rookie who there's always some question marks there. So Sean Murphy, he will definitely help them improve, but not as much as I think Dansby Swanson will take away at shortstop versus Sean Murphy catcher, if that makes sense.
Yeah, I was surprised to see what Dansby's end of the year numbers ended up at. In his best year of his career, where, I mean, clearly the best that he's been as an MLB baseball player, it just didn't, the end of the year numbers didn't jump off the page. It was only a slightly above average hitter. At the shortstop position, there were a lot of guys who were just simply better than he was. So I think that you're right, it might be their biggest loss on the baseball field, but Dansby was asking for a lot of money. I don't think that contract was going to be worth it or age very well for the Braves, and they were able to get Sean Murphy, and they didn't have to give up a whole lot. I agree that maybe they didn't need to bring in a catcher. I actually think Travis d'Arnaud would have made a lot of sense coming in, and I think they just felt like that was their biggest hole in the lineup. And for the Braves, obviously a hole is different than a hole is for other teams because the Braves have such a great lineup. But I think for what Dansby was asking for and what it ended up costing to get Sean Murphy, that's why I went with Sean, because it wasn't as big of a deal. They didn't need to give him Dansby Swanson level money, and they didn't need to trade prospects that it felt like Dansby was asking for a lot, and they didn't have to give up much to get Murphy.
Yeah, maybe you're right that Dansby maybe got a little bit overpaid in what he was asking for and what he got. But you look at the Braves; they've been able to kind of dance around the money situation, and with a lot of these cheap extensions, and maybe that's what they were going for with Dansby, like kind of, do you want to be a Brave type of thing, and pay him a little bit, undercut him a little bit. But I think you look at it that way, maybe you're right. Dansby Swanson, good riddance. We're not going to pay you that much. But also, if you're looking at it from a specifically like production on the field, going from one guy to another, I think they will miss him a little bit. If you look at kind of in a vacuum, like shortstop production, but maybe in the lineup as a whole, they might not miss him as much.
Yeah, I think Dansby was one of those free agents where for the Cubs, it was a big deal because they're like, wow, we got one of the big free agents, and they overpaid in order to be able to say, hey, we ended up with one of these bigger free agents. The Braves, it felt like, they know that their lineup is going to be good whether they have Dansby or not, and so they're not going to pay him more than they think he's worth. They'll let another team do that and just move up one of these young players, which they've had a lot of success bringing up young guys, and they always turn out to be stars. You can say that for a lot of teams, and the Braves are certainly one of them. So I think it made sense for the Braves to let him walk, but there were talks about, okay, if Dansby walks, do the Braves sign a guy like Xander Bogaerts? Do they go after a Jacob deGrom? And they didn't really end up with one of those players in free agency. And I know they traded for Sean Murphy, who's a great defensive catcher and hits the ball well too and provides a lot of value on the baseball field, but it didn't feel exactly to me like they made any big upgrades to the overall team. So getting into my grade, I went with a C because I just think it was an average offseason. I think that adding Sean Murphy is offset by the loss of Dansby Swanson or the loss of some of these other players like a William Contreras, even Kenley Jansen, Adam Duvall. Like Sean Murphy was the big player they added, but they lost some too. So I thought it was right there in the middle, a wash of an offseason. And when you're a team like the Braves, that's okay, but I'm still going with a C.
I ended with a B-, and maybe that was kind of looking at it from the Braves' perspective a little bit. We've kind of tried to stay looking at this offseason specifically, not necessarily what the rest of the team needed per se. It has a little bit of a factor, but yeah, you're right. Maybe it's just a wash in terms of losing players and adding players, but I feel like maybe the Braves bias came into a little bit like they didn't need to, and they still added a great piece. So I ended up going with a B-, and they're trusting their young talent, which I like, and it provides that confidence boost that they need for Vaughn Grissom, saying, okay, you played kind of well last year when we brought you up, so now you're the everyday shortstop, go out and try and do it. So even though they didn't need to add a catcher, I like doing that as well. So between those two, and was there a Michael Harris extension? Was that this offseason as well?
I think so.
So you factor those in. I think I'll go with a B-.
No, I think maybe I was a little harsh. Maybe I'll bump it up to a C+, because you're right. They did place some trust in the young players, and I think that you do have to give them props for not falling for the Dansby Swanson move in free agency, because he is a fan favorite. He did have a good season for them, but I felt like a Dansby contract is kind of a trap. And maybe it's not as much for a team like the Cubs, but for the Braves, who have players to extend in the future. I know that they've gotten away with some robbery deals on some of the guys that they've brought in and some of their homegrown talent, but they still haven't extended Max Fried. They still have Spencer Strider, who could potentially come on the books in the next couple of years. So sinking that much money into Dansby, and they'd be paying him more than they're paying some of the other guys on their team, like a Ronald Acuna Jr., Ozzie Albies, Austin Riley. Like, they've got a lot of guys on steals where now it's Dansby's in free agency. Are you going to pay him? And I think that maybe I'll bump it up to a C+ because they didn't fall for the bait there, and they're allowing some of these younger guys to get some more playing time. So I think it was a little harsh. I'll go C+.
And now, what do you expect moving into this upcoming season? What do you expect from the Braves?
I mean, there's no question they're going to make the playoffs, and I think I'm going to opt for an answer that was a lot like my Dodgers answer. You can go watch that video. I'll try and link it up here if I remember. But I think they're going to make the playoffs, and I think they'll be more prepared when the time comes around this season. I think when you have such a shock, like losing to your division rivals, the Phillies, when you weren't expecting it, everyone was saying, hey, this is maybe a team that has a 50% chance at making the World Series. It's either them or the Dodgers. Maybe some people thought it was the Mets, but everyone was pretty confident the Braves were at least going to make the National League Championship Series, and they get knocked by their own division mates in the Phillies. You sit with that for an offseason and throughout the full season, and I think it prepares you for the playoffs. They didn't go out and make these crazy moves. Like, I know they traded for Sean Murphy, but that's a lot. That's a big difference, I think, than adding Matt Olson or going out and signing some guys that they've made big moves in the past. Same with the Dodgers. They didn't do a whole ton, and I think that's because they're preparing to just run it back with this squad and make sure they don't make the same mistake as they did last year. So for what to expect from me, I'm saying making the playoffs, and they're going to be way more prepared by the time that they make it.
Yeah, I'm expecting playoffs as well, and I think I'm going to take it one step further. I think they're going to win the division again, and I've kind of seen some popular things about the Mets winning it this year, that they add Verlander over DeGrom. We'll talk about that more in depth in our Mets video. But I've also seen some people picking the Braves as third in kind of early people's picks. So we'll see more people picking that as the time comes. A lot of people are liking the Phillies, what they did this offseason, a year after making a World Series run. But I'm going to go first place in the division again. I've got a lot of trust in their lineup, in their rotation, just top to bottom. I've got a lot of trust in them, and winning it the last close to probably 5 years now in a row for the Braves. I think they're one of those things, like, I need to see it taken away from them, because obviously you got the Mets gonna Met saying, and they were leading for quite a while and then ended up coming down to the final series of the year. But I've got some trust in the Braves. I think they're going to win the division again, and they're going to compete for the first overall seed in the National League as well.
Yeah, I mean, to change my what to expect, they're definitely not coming in third. I would say you're finishing first or second in the division. I don't think there's any way that the Braves end up in third place, and who knows, maybe this will end up on freezing cold takes by the end of the year, but I don't see it. I think that the Braves have a solid shot at 1 or 2. I really don't see them coming in third. That's just too good of a team. Whether you're talking about the starting pitching with so many studs: Charlie Morton, Max Fried, Spencer Strider, Kyle Wright, Mike Soroka. If he can be on the field and be healthy, could be a good pitcher. They've got a lot of arms, pretty good bullpen, and they were one of the top 5 bullpens in the league last year. And now you've got Raisel Iglesias full time as a closer. The lineup's insane. The depth is pretty good as well. The prospects are always great. Brian Snitker's a good manager. Like, I just don't see a way where that team ends up in third, barring some just crazy, terrible injuries. But do you want to get into your bold predictions at all?
Yeah, my bold prediction is a World Series trip for the Braves. I think they're going to be back, and I'm not going to spoil if I have them winning or not. If you want to see that, you're going to have to watch our full season prediction for record, awards, World Series, all of that coming out towards closer to the start of the season. So I'm not going to spoil whether I have them winning or not, but I do think they will be back into the World Series. And I guess with these bold predictions, we've kind of stuck to things like we can see happening, and maybe we'll say it for this bold prediction, but we might not necessarily pick it if the time comes. But this is one that I've kind of said for a while, and actually in our last World Series, last October when we were doing our World Series preview show, one of our end segments was, who's your pick for next World Series? And I had the Braves in that World Series, so I'm sticking with that, and I think they're going to be back. And like you said, their roster's so good, and I think that's what I'm going to go with for my bold prediction.
So it's the Braves versus someone not the Astros. That's what I'm piecing together exactly what you're predicting so far going into the season. For me, I went player specific. I think Matt Olson's going to go off this year. He still had a pretty good year last year in what everyone thought was a down year. And I just think he's going to go off because hit a lot of home runs last year, and he was making adjustments because he played for the A's for so long and never really got pitches to hit. And this was his first season playing in a good lineup, and he swung at the first pitch more because he was getting more strikes. He chased more because he was getting desperate because he was seeing pitches more often, struck out more last year. And I think he was just adjusting to the first time being in a good lineup. I think he's going to come in to this season with a more focused approach like he had with the A's. And also, he's got a ton of power, and the shift going away, he's one of those hitters, all these lefties that are going to benefit from no shift. Today in the Braves' first spring training game, had a hit that was, I saw a cut-up of it, hit a ground ball last year into the hole. There was an out. Today, hit that same ground ball, but there's no shift. It's a single. He also hit a home run today. So I think Matt Olson's going to go off for a lot of different reasons, but he's just still a stud.
Yeah, I saw that video as well. And yeah, we believe in Matt Olson, and you're right. It was a little bit of a maybe disappointment. Numbers were okay at the end of it, but a lot of people were expecting him to be as good or maybe better than Freddie Freeman last year, and that just wasn't the case. So maybe he can live up to it this year. He signed a big extension, so it'll be exciting to see what Matt Olson can do.
Yeah, I'm a big believer, and I think that, I mean, no matter who it is, there's some people on this team that can have a down year, but there's just so many guys that will pick up the slack. Like last year, Matt Olson wasn't the best that he's ever been. Ronald Acuna Jr., definitely not the best he's ever been, but Austin Riley turns into an MVP candidate. Dansby Swanson takes another step. Michael Harris comes up after no one really knew who he was and ends up being, him and Spencer Strider are the 2 rookies of the year in the National League. Whoever you thought deserved the award, they were both 1 and 2. I mean, there's so many great players on this team that if they all come together, I think World Series is almost, definite, but they're just such a good team that people can have down months and the other people are going to pick it up.
Yeah, well, that's it for our Braves 2023 season preview. Let us know what you think about it. Are they going to be in the World Series? Are they going to be first place in the division? Let us know what you think about the Braves season down below. Make sure you like and subscribe as well to see all of our season previews, and then go check out our final preview at the end of this series to see who I have winning in the World Series. Is it the Braves? Is it some mystery American League team that they're going to face? Make sure you stick around for that. Thank you. We've been Double Play, and we'll see you next time.